This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so again, I'm loose and back to the study group. So,
Already told me I'll talk to you later. I made a
oh,
meeting. I
guys,
can't
please make sure
talk.
you're muting yourself,
I can't
please.
talk.
Okay, let's go ahead and mute everyone. There we go. Um, all right, so I started this group back in 2018 when I was working for the Florida Department of Health as a healthcare associated infections epidemiologist. And the reason why I started this group was I felt that there was a really big need for access to infection prevention education in the state of Florida at the time. And it started out really small with just meeting locally with a couple of the county epidemiologists, and then with time, it really grew. It just started to grow and grow and grow and grow. And so now this group is basically a place where we meet together, and we go over infection prevention education to help you prepare for your CIC, uh, exam. Now, there is a new test that is available, which is the AIPC. It's the associate certification. I think the information is still applicable if that's the test that you're studying for, because it's covering essentially the same exam content. It's just not as thorough, or it's not as much of a deep dive into the exam content, if that makes sense. So my professional experience, I've got a lot of certifications. I've certified in public health, infection prevention. I've got my CRCST, which has been one of my favorite certifications, which is really focusing around sterile processing. And then the vascular access board certification, which is my most recent certification, which really focuses on vascular access. And that was definitely a passion of mine. It was really understanding more of the vascular access system to focus on our CLABSI prevention on our campus. Some of my interests, I like hiking, I love traveling, reading, and hanging out at home. I've got lots of different things that I like as far as books and media, like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and lots of other good stuff. And then these are just a couple pictures. So with my team, I've got a really amazing and wonderful team of infection preventionists here at my facility, and I absolutely love the work that I do. I am so grateful that I found a career that aligns so deeply with like my purpose, things that I'm interested in, a career that challenges me. And I know that there's probably a lot of you who are either working in infection prevention or who may be working in public health and considering a career within infection prevention. And so this is a way of, for you to really expand your knowledge base and learn more about what IP is all about and what preparing for this exam is like. Okay. So the certification in infection prevention and control. So the mission is to protect the public through the development, administration, and promotion of an accredited certification in infection prevention and control. Civic maintains and promotes professional certification of the highest quality through the accomplishment of key objectives. So this is a voluntary, independent certification. You're choosing to do this. I know for many of you, this is going to be Sebastian, stop it. I know that for many of you, this is going to be a challenging exam. It's a lot of information that you're going to have to know. And so just know that this is going to be challenging, but it's going to be fun. For the first time CIC, I've got a question. For the first time CIC, you're recommending we take the AIPC? No, not necessarily. So there's different requirements that you need to meet in order for, well, okay, for the AIPC, the requirements are different than your CIC. For the CIC, it has a high requirement for your actual job role and that you have direct infection prevention overview. Like IP, preventing infections, actually has to be within your job description to sit for the CIC. Considering the cost of both exams, you might as well get the CIC. I agree, but there's the problem is that not everyone is going to meet not everyone is going to necessarily meet the professional requirements depending on the role that they're in and the position that they have. So the examination content outline. This is what is going to be on the exam. Identification of infectious disease processes, surveillance and epidemiologic investigation, preventing and controlling the transmission of infectious agents, employee and occupational health, management and communication, education and research, environment of care, cleaning, sterilization, disinfection, and asepsis. So there's going to be a lot of content. This test is really to verify that you are really proficient in a lot of baseline knowledge with infection prevention in all different areas of infection prevention. So as you're preparing for this exam, one of the first things that I'm going to ask you to do is you need to take a practice exam. All right, I'm going to go over all of the tools and the things that you'll need in order to prepare for this test. But it's really important that you take a practice exam before you even start studying, before you get ready to dive in and look at all of the different, examination areas and the categories and competencies. Because it's important to know, what are my weak areas? When you first take your practice exam, there are going to be certain areas of the test that you're going to score higher in than others. So for example, if you are an epidemiologist, surveillance and epidemiologic investigation might be one of those areas where you score really high versus cleaning, sterilization, disinfection, and asepsis, right? So the area where we're talking about sterile processing departments, surgical services, if that's not something that you're working and dealing with every day, you might not be able to get as high of a score in that versus surveillance and epidemiologic investigation. And the reason why taking that practice test is important is because it's going to give you an idea of what areas you really need to work on during your test prep. We naturally want to do things that we're good at, right? So if you enjoy learning about infectious disease processes, you're going to want to read a lot more chapters in that area. But if you're scoring poorly in environment of care and cleaning, sterilization, disinfection, and asepsis, you need to focus more time on those areas to make sure that you're getting that score to where it needs to be. Okay, so becoming certified. Step one is you've got to review the CIC eligibility requirements. Then you're going to submit your application and your supporting documentation and your application fee. And that supporting documentation is going to include a job description. And they're very, very specific about the fact that it needs to be a job description on the website. Step three, you have to wait about 7 to 10 business days for the Civic office to review your application to make sure that you meet criteria in order to sit and test. Then if you're accepted, you're going to receive an email from Civic about your next steps, but you have to schedule to take your exam within 90 days. So the big thing here is you have 90 days from the time that you get accepted and they tell you, hey, you meet our criteria and you can sit and take this exam. You have 90 days and that's it. So you want to make sure that by the time that you submit that attestation statement and you get your email, you're like, you have already started, starting to prepare and getting really serious about studying. If successful, your certification is valid for the next 5 years. I am in my recertification year. So 2022 is the year when I need to recertify. What are the requirements for the CIC initial certification and for lab certificates? So it's intended for individuals who are directly responsible for infection prevention and control programs within their current position. Interested candidates must be actively employed and accountable for infection prevention and control. So direct responsibility means within their role, this person is responsible for providing consultation to departments or assigned practice settings on infection prevention and control program elements, practices and processes, as well as products used within the healthcare facilities. For example, public health practitioners must be prepared to provide guidance appropriate to reduce transmission or halt outbreaks in a variety of practice settings, and their job description includes this activity. So that's really important that you actually look at your official job description and you look at all of the different responsibilities and duties that are included in that job description. You need to provide a diploma or a transcript. A letter's not going to be sufficient, and the job description. They tell you like a letter written by your supervisor or HR is not sufficient. You need to completed post-secondary education in a healthcare-related field, included but not limited to medicine, nursing, lab technology, public health, or biology. A diploma like an RN, an LPN, LVN, DPN, and a healthcare health-related associate's degree, bachelor's, master's, or doctorate would be eligible. And then post-secondary includes public or private universities, colleges, and community colleges. Direct responsibility, you see that, and then work experience. So this is the important part, because this definitely changed when they updated the requirements in 2021. So work experience is defined as active engagement in infection prevention determined by a current job description for compensation for a minimum of at least 1 year of full-time employment or 2 years of part-time employment, or completed 3,000 hours of infection prevention work experience earned during the previous 3 years. I've got a question. Would this fall under epidemiology if this indeed falls under my job description? You have to look at your job description. You have to look at specifically what your job description is stating. Like, so they specifically on their website have like healthcare associated epidemiologist. That is one of the examples of a title that would fit that that criteria, because in epi we have a lot of different epi work that's done, right? So you've got to make sure that as you review your official job description, you're meeting criteria for this certification. I'm only going to be covering the CIC. I'm not going into the requirements for the AIPC here, because that's an introductory, that's a novice, you know, it's a novice level certification, which is great. But the study group is specifically, you know, to help you focus on actually preparing and taking your CIC. You're able to stay, join, watch if you are going to be taking the AIPC, but I won't be covering that certification today. This is your attestation statement. You have to have your infection prevention activities must include, and you're going to see that this looks very familiar because it's your competency areas that they mentioned before that you're going to be tested on. So identification of infectious diseases, employee and occupational health, management and communication, education and research, etc. Okay, so these are all of your CIC requirements. It's important for you to know that there is a fee to take the test. So you've got to pay $375 for your application fee. A lot of your facilities will cover the application fee, but you have to pass the exam. So it's like you'll get reimbursed after you pass your exam. So make sure that you talk to your leaders about that, about what's available. And then there are further details on the Civic website on how you complete your attestation statement, the copy of it so you can download it, print it, all of the requirements. So what are the objectives of certification? The purpose of the CIC certification and recertification process is to protect the public by providing standardized measurement of current essential knowledge needed for infection prevention and control practitioners, encouraging individual growth and study, thereby promoting professionalism among practitioners in infection prevention and control, and formally recognizing experienced professionals in infection prevention and control who fulfill the requirements for the CIC certification and recertification. So APIC updated their competency model, and you can see that within their new competency model, you've got your novice, and then you've got becoming proficient, which is where a lot of you are, and then you've got your CIC credential right here before you reach proficient and expert. So these are all wedges, and there were additional wedges that were added into the APIC competency model. But this is what our roles are centered around. So at the very, very core of IP, we've got patient safety across the continuum of care. So we want to do everything that we can to ensure that we're keeping patients safe when they're coming to our facilities, to all of our healthcare facilities. Some of you may be novice IPs, some of you may be in this becoming proficient window, and then this is where you're trying to get to your CIC credential. So all of these different wedges have specific how would I put it? It's like responsibilities or competencies that are listed under the wedge. So under research and leadership, professional stewardship, informatics, quality improvement, and this is what this will cover. So this is the 2019 APIC competency model, which is future oriented with competency domains. So under leadership, you've got communication, critical thinking, collaboration, your behavioral sciences, program management, and mentorship. So you've got under every single little wedge, there are different competency domains, different basically areas that as an IP you need to grow in with each step. So as you move through the competency model, your wedge will start to become larger and larger, and your knowledge base is just going to keep increasing with every passing year and certification and challenge that you face within your role. So if you haven't seen the competency model, it's actually it's a very nice interactive tool. If you click on the, when I upload this to our Google Drive, if you click on the link, or even if you just Google it, APIC competency model, it's interactive on the APIC website. So you can click on the different wedges and on the different circles, and information will pop up at the bottom of the page that will actually tell you about, each area of the APIC competency model. Okay, so what are our group expectations? We're going to have 1 hour meetings on Fridays from 2 to 3 p.m. This is the introductory meeting. So this is just where I'm telling you what the test is about, what the group is about, when we're going to meet, the different resources that you need to make sure that you have. And then starting next week is when we're going to start diving into content, like exam content material. We'll do a couple practice questions today, but next week is when it's going to be lecture based. We're going to start going over topics for all of the chapters that will be assigned today. So active participation is great on a weekly basis. You just hop on, you do your hour, but this is not enough. So this group is just supplemental. This group is a supplemental resource where you can come, where we can talk about, different chapters of the APIC text, but it's still going to require a very serious time commitment as far as you preparing for the test, making sure that you're getting your chapter readings done, and that if there is an area that you're lacking in, that you're spending that time, reading and expanding your knowledge. So about 2 to 5 hours of reading every week. It could be more than 5. It's an estimated that 120 hours will be spent preparing for the exam within the next 6 months. So a lot of you are, I got a couple emails asking what's the length of time for each cohort. So back in the day, when I was a little bit more bold and had a little bit more time and we weren't in the middle of an entire panoramic, I would do 2 cohorts per year, no more. I am only doing 1 cohort per year. So one, it's just 6 months, okay? 6 months per year. So we're starting our 6 months now. When our 6 months ends, that will be it for 2022. And then I'll be back in 2023. So every Friday for an hour. And then you have to remember that there is a cost associated for the CIC exam, which is $375. I make sure that people know that up front because preparing for certifications is expensive. Making sure that you have access to all of the tools that you need to be successful to pass a certification it's not cheap. It's something that you have to invest money into. For a lot of us who are IPs and already work at acute care hospitals, depending on how large your institution is, whether it's an academic institution, etc., you may already have these resources available to you. So the first thing, there are essentially 3 things that I believe you need in order to succeed on this. And the most important 2 are access to the APIC text of infection control and epidemiology and access to the Certification Study Guide 6th edition. So this one here is the APIC text. They are out of print for this text, so you have to do the APIC text online, and I'll cover the cost of that in a little bit. Then you have your certification study guide. This is all questions. It's a question-based book. It's got a bunch of questions in it, so that you can do a lot of practice questions of what the test is going to look like. And then the last thing is going to be the 6-month CIC study plan. So the study plan is something that I developed back when I was at the Department of Health, and it's still great. It has a lot of really important information. It gives you a schedule, and it'll help you really understand kind of what we're working with. So the APIC text of infection control, if you're at a hospital and you already have this via your library or your organization has already paid for your membership, that's excellent. If you do not, then I think this is something that you need to talk to your leadership about. You really cannot prepare for this test without access to this. And that's just the honest to goodness truth. You can't prepare for the CIC without having access to the APIC text. The APIC text is what the majority of the content is going to be on for your exam. They do pull in other resources. They obviously are going to pull in CDC guidelines, AORN, lots of really other great organizations, but this is going to be what you really need to focus on, what you got to read your chapters out of, and what we use for the study group. I mean, you're going to have assigned readings, and this is where you can find those assigned readings. So if you're a non-member, it's $219. If you are an APIC member, it's $169 for access to the online text. Like I said, it's out of print. I get lots of emails asking me if I know how, do you know where I can get the actual hard copy books? I don't. I don't know. I don't know where you can get them. Maybe eBay, but I have no idea. Okay, another resource that you can try is the APIC CIC review course. This is a online review course that's offered through APIC. If you're a member, it's $350. If you're a non-member, it's $475. By the way, these are all resources that I used, just so that, and this is why I'm touching on them. An additional resource is the Civic exam practice questions by MOmetrix. This is a great little book. It's got 2 practice tests in it, so it's got access to more questions. You want to make sure that you're doing lots of practice questions, that you're getting very familiar and comfortable with the way that the test is going to ask you questions, because they have a lot of really they're tricky. Like some of their questions are very tricky, but once you start to really learn their tricks, it becomes much easier. Okay, so how long is the Civic study course scheduled for? Ideally 6 months like yours. So this one is self-paced. So you pay for access to their online platform, and it's self-paced. So you can, go through it on your own time, however you would like to go through. However you would like to go through it. So you've got your Civic practice exam, and this is a practice exam that, again, it's $50, and this is one that I wouldn't use until like the very end. I wouldn't do this online practice exam till close to like my last month, because it doesn't provide you it doesn't provide you explanations. It's just going to tell you whether you passed or you didn't. So I wouldn't do this one until the very end. Okay, so the learning pyramid. Lecture 5%, reading 10%, audiovisual 20%, demonstration 30%, discussion groups 50%, practice by doing or writing 75%, and then teaching others or immediate use, you're at 90% of your average retention rates. This is an important pyramid for you to keep in mind. By now, hopefully you understand what kind of a learner you are. Auditory learning is what really works for me. So I love listening to podcasts. I love audiobooks, listening to lectures on YouTube. Those are ways that I can consume information, and it really sticks for me. So you have to realize, what do you enjoy doing, and how do you enjoy learning, and what helps you learn? Because preparing for this test is going to require a lot of information consumption. So whether you are reading it, listening to it, doing whatever you need to do, you need to figure that out, because we all have different ways that we learn and that we're successful. So please keep this in mind. The Google Drive. Okay, some of you will not be able to access this on your organizational computers. Okay, so if you work at a hospital, this will be blocked. You will not be able, well, not all hospitals, but quite a lot of you will not be able to access the Google Drive on your actual work computer. So you will need to access this on your home computer. But this is where all of the materials are kept. Some of you maybe haven't registered yet and you are just getting started. You're just figuring out what your timeline is going to be, when you're going to be taking the test. And you'll be able to just kind of do this entire cohort and go through the 6 months and take your test, at the end of it. Some of you have already signed up and you've got your test coming up within 3 months. This is the link that you want. You want the link to the Google Drive, because in here is where we keep all of our study group material. So this Google Drive is shared between the Washington study group and the Florida study group and any other study group that is in it. I just still have Washington and my study group that is in here. When you click on the link, you're going to go to your Florida materials, okay? And under Florida materials, you're going to see all of these different files, okay? All of these presentations that we're going to do are already in here. So if you all have already signed up for your exam, you can go back and watch previously recorded webinars to make sure that you're, watching what you need to watch, studying what you need to study. But this is where you're going to find that information. Previous recorded webinars, tips that that people have used to pass their exam, the certification in infection prevention and control study plan, where we go over where the one that I created that tells you what chapters you need to read each week. That's all in there. These are the really important files. The study plan, which goes week by week, the chapters that are assigned, the frequently asked questions, and then all of the recordings. That way you have access to the recordings. I'm going to see if I can drop the link in the chat for those of you who are asking for it. Let me see if I can do this. If I do this, send to everyone. Okay, so there it is. There's the link. Grab it, copy and paste it, save it, email it to yourself. Do what you need to do to have access to it. All right, and then here's a brief overview of the study plan. So the study plan has the exam components. So your identification of infectious disease process, surveillance and epidemiologic investigation, preventing and controlling the transmission of infectious agents, and employee and occupational health, management and communication, all of the good stuff. What do you need to follow the study plan? You need access to the APIC text, okay? Those of you who have the hard copies, great. Those of you who are using the APIC online text, which will be the majority, this is where the assigned readings are coming from. And the other thing is the certification study guide. You got to have it. You need those two. Very important. So this is an example of, for example, the first section that we're going to be working on is identification of infectious disease processes. So next week, the things that we're going to talk about are going to be chapter 21, chapters 22, and chapters 23. So risk factors for facilitating transmission of infectious agents, microbial pathogenicity and host response, and the immunocompromised host. That's what is happening next week. Okay, how many of you, no, oh, too fast. If you already took the 4 tendencies quiz, that's great. I got a lot of answers in the chat. I've got a lot of obligers, I've got questioners. I only saw 1 rebel, so, that's okay, that's all right. The rebels are great. So why did I assign you this? Oh, yay, there's another rebel. Okay. There's more than one. There's more than one. The reason that I assigned you the 4 tendencies is because this is really a great tool for you to get to know a little bit more about yourself and about the people, that you're working with. So if you didn't have the opportunity to take the quiz, that's okay. You can take some time to take it on later, today or whenever you have time. We're going to watch a quick video. So let me see if this works. You guys tell me if you can hear the video when it plays. Can you guys hear it? No? No, you cannot hear it.
No.
Okay. Okay, please hold.
like our own desire to keep in your
That's fine now. It's working.
Okay. Oh wait, you can hear it now?
resolution, our
Yes.
own desire
Yes.
back into practicing guitar.
Oh, okay, great.
So depending on how you respond to expectations, you're an upholder, a questioner, an obliger, or a rebel. Upholders readily meet outer and inner expectations. They keep the work deadline. They
Whoops. It fell off.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I sneezed and it went away.
We lost our fearless leader.
Oh my goodness. I am struggling in this life. Oh, here we go. Okay.
keep the New Year's resolution without much fuss. Questioners question all expectations.
Is it back?
They'll do it if they think it makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, it's totally back.
Obligers readily meet outer expectations, but they struggle to meet inner expectations. And then finally, rebels. Rebels resist all expectations, outer and inner alike. They want to do what they want to do in their own way, in their own time. So what do you do with this information? How can it help you manage yourself better, and how can it help you deal better with other people? Each of the tendencies has many mottos, and my favorite motto for upholder is, discipline is my freedom. And there's a lot of great things about being upholders. They're self-reliant, they're self-starters, they're very good at executing, they want to meet expectations. But as with all the tendencies, the upsides are also the downsides. And upholders can be rigid. So you want to make sure, if you're an upholder or you're dealing with an upholder, that they're not turning into like the mindless bureaucrat of doing their own paperwork endlessly. Next, questioners. And the motto for the questioners is, if you convince me why, then I'll comply. They're always looking how to make processes better. They tend to love information. They're really great for all of us because they're the ones who are saying, like, why are we doing this by Friday? Why are we doing this report? Why are we listening to you? Why are we doing this at all? But the upsides are the downsides. Questioners sometimes drain and overwhelm others with their constant questioning. So what do you do if you're a questioner or you're dealing with a questioner who's stuck in analysis paralysis? One is to use deadlines. Another is limits. You can interview 5 people for this job position, but we're not going to interview 15 people. Or you find trusted authority. If you want to buy a new great bicycle, you could spend the rest of your life trying to figure out what is the best bicycle. Or you could just go to a really, really great bike shop and think, people who work here really know a lot about bikes. I can be very guided by their judgment. So next, obligers. So obligers are the rock of the world. They are the type O. They are the type that pairs up the most easily with the other tendencies. Really, the frustration of being an obliger falls most on obligers themselves, which is reflected in their motto, which is, you can count on me, and I'm counting on you to count on me. What's the cure for this? If you want to meet an inner expectation, you must create systems of outer accountability around that inner expectation. You want to read more? Join a book group. Now, finally, rebels. Their motto is, you can't make me, and neither can I. It can be challenging to be working or living with somebody who, every time you ask or tell them to do something, is very likely to resist. So how do you help a rebel or help yourself as a rebel? So let's say you have a rebel colleague who's refusing to go to a mandatory Wednesday morning meeting. You could say to the rebel something like, I don't know if you know that we have these Wednesday 10 a.m. meetings. It's like everybody who's at the meeting, we think about all the projects that are coming up in the next several weeks, and then everybody in the meeting, we take the interesting ones. And then we leave the dregs for the people who aren't at the meeting. So yeah, the meeting's at 10 a.m. on Wednesdays. Information, consequences, choice. It's up to you. So I really do think that this can help you show compassion for yourself, because there's nothing wrong with you. You're not lazy. You don't lack willpower. It's totally predictable that something that's easy for someone else might be challenging for you. There's plenty of ways to work around that. And it can also allow us to show more compassion to other people. Because when we understand other people, then it's not a matter of one person's right and one person's wrong. It's just how do we both, or all of us, get where we want to go.
Okay, so this is probably one of the most important things that I learned in 2021 was really getting to learn about the 4 tendencies, because it helped me understand the people that I work with better, and it helped me understand myself better. So I will tell you that I am an obliger. Okay, I am an obliger. So we'll dive a little bit into it, but this is going to be really helpful in you coming up with a plan on how to study, and also just as an infection preventionist, how to deal with people better. So one of my IPs is an upholder, and she is excellent. Okay, she is excellent. She's an excellent infection preventionist. And the thing about upholders is that they're very disciplined, right? So they're very disciplined people. They're, they're rigid. They love policies. They love guidelines, having flow charts, step-by-steps, having a schedule, knowing I need to get these things done, and this is my plan, and this is how I'm going to do it. They're excellent at that. So if you're an upholder, you know that what you need to do in order to succeed for this test is to come up with your schedule and to come up with your plan. What's going to be my routine? Am I going to study on Tuesdays and Thursdays and then read a little bit on Sundays? Or what is going to be the routine that I need in order to succeed in this area? Okay, so very, very, very important for you to know what your tendency is. Because I'm telling you, this is going to make a difference in your study prep. Questionnaires, okay? Oh, let me tell you a thing about upholders too. It's going to play a part when you take the test, because upholders take questions very literally, very literally. So whatever that question is written as, it's how it's going to be viewed. So that creative part, that interpretation part, that might be a part that you struggle with when you're taking the test, okay? So important to know your tendencies. With the questionnaire, if you convince me why, then I'll comply. With questionnaires, if you're a questioner, please understand that you have a tendency of going down rabbit holes of information and then getting stuck in that place of analysis paralysis. So you're going to have to pay a lot of attention to how much time you're spending on questions, okay? Because you have a set amount of time for the exam. So if you're really spiraling down and overthinking every single question that you're going through, you're going to run out of time on the test. You're going to run out of time on the test. For your study prep, you need to understand the importance of the exam, of why you want to pursue this certification. Why is it important to you? Because understanding that is really, really important for your success, because you have to value it and you have to understand it in order to really do it and to fully commit to it. If this certification doesn't have your buy-in, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen, because you either don't see the importance of it, or you don't see why you need to do it, and it's not going to get done. Okay. Obligers, my fellow obligers, the rest of us out there. Okay. We tend to be the tendency that has no problem with meeting external expectations. So if it is expected that you get this CIC and it's part of your role and it's written into your job description and it's something that your leaders are really pushing you towards, it's going to get done. However, if this certification is something that's a bit more internal, that's something that you're wanting to do for your professional development, we're going to need some work. Okay, we're going to need some external accountability. So things that really work for us are going to be like having a study partner, having somebody that you are checking in with, okay? Because it's going to be that form of external accountability for you to make sure, like, oh, hey, I'm going to check in with my reading buddy, or, my study partner is this person and they're reading this chapter and I'm reading this chapter, and we're going to share what we learned, okay? Having different ways where you have external accountabilities is going to be really important in making you successful. And you just have to pay attention, right, to how much you're taking on, because as an obliger, we tend to say yes, 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 yes to everything. Hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do this project? Hey, can you sign up for this? Whether it's a work request or stuff going on at home, your family wanting you to be more involved with things. So when you're preparing for this exam, it's important to keep that in mind, because you may have to set some boundaries, like, oh, I actually can't help you with that because I have to study tonight. There's something that I need to do tonight. You see, if an upholder has
a schedule and it's in their schedule that they're going to be studying, and that's, that's what they need to do, like they're going to get it done. They're going to have no problem saying no to somebody. They're going to be like, nope, I can't do that. I can't go watch that movie because it's on my schedule that I'm going to study. For us obligers, we might be like, oh, well, yeah, I guess I can go see that movie, and I'll just study later. Because if it's that internal expectation, we really struggle with that. So like an example would be, an internal expectation for me would be going to the gym. So going to the gym, I already know. I either got to have a personal trainer or I got to have a person that I'm checking in with. So, like one of my friends who's also going to the gym, or just having like a workout buddy. That really helps me because that's a fully internal expectation. It has nothing to do with like my job, my academics, my professional development, because that stuff I can get done without a problem. Rebels. So you can't make me, and neither can I. My little sister is a rebel, and she's a wonderful, wonderful person. But you need to know that for this tendency, information, consequences, choice is really important. So having the information that's centered around the test, the consequences of what happens if you don't make time to study, and then the choice, your individuality and your sense of like having your own personality and of identity is really important. And so you have to keep that in mind when you're preparing for this test. What about this test aligns with what you value within yourself and your role and the work that you do, because that's going to really help you stay on track with making sure that you're getting your stuff done. Okay, before we move on, because we're going to do the practice questions and then we're wrapping this up, does anybody have any questions so far? Because we're about to move straight into our practice questions. I just want to make sure I answer any questions before we move on.
Yes, would you please repeat the chapters we have to read for next week?
Yes, they're going to be at the very end. So don't worry. The assignments will be at the very end. Yeah. Okay. All right. I see no other questions. Okay, so let's get into the practice questions. Question number 1. The IP is reviewing the chart of a patient with a sputum culture positive for pathogens. Which of the following findings indicates that the specimen had been properly collected from a patient with a possible bacterial pneumonia? So A, numerous neutrophils and few, if any, epithelial cells. B, the presence of blood. C, many epithelial cells and few neutrophils. Or D, variety of both gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria. So go ahead and type your answer in the chat. Oh, we've got lots of questions. Lots of answers. So we've got a lot of A's. The A's are winning. And then we've got a couple C's sprinkled in and a few D's sprinkled in. Okay. So, so people are changing their answers now. Now they're like, oh, I think it's D. Okay, so the correct answer is A, numerous neutrophils and few, if any, epithelial cells. So when you're really breaking down questions, you want to make sure that you're understanding what they're asking you. And for this question, they want to know, how can we tell that a specimen has been properly collected? Okay, what is pointing us towards a proper collection in a specimen that has not been contaminated? Okay, so useful sputum cultures results rely heavily on good sample collection. If examination of a gram stain of the sample reveals that it contains a significant number of normal cells that line the mouth, like squamous epithelial cells, then the sample is not generally considered adequate for culture, and a recollection of the sample may be required. If the sample contains a majority of neutrophils, that indicates a body's response to an infection. then it is considered to be an adequate sample for culturing. And that's going to be in chapter 24, microbiology basics. Chapter 24 is very important chapter. All right, question 2. A 14-year-old boy from rural Maryland was seen in the emergency room with fever, fatigue, chills, headache, and a large annular lesion on his left thigh, which the patient described as burning and itching. What is the most probable vector of this child's illness? Okay, we've got, again, lots of A's. Lots of A's. That kid's been around some deer. Maybe a horse. Who plays outside? Okay. Yes, tick. It's a tick. It's a tick. And somebody already put it in here. What disease are we thinking about when we see an annular lesion? Yes, very good. Lyme. Lyme disease. Very good. Yes, people were already, someone put sounds like Lyme. It does, doesn't it? So Lyme disease is caused by the bacterium Borrelia burgdorferi and is transmitted to humans through the bite of infected black-legged ticks. Typical symptoms include fever, headache, fatigue, and a characteristic skin rash called erythema migrans. If left untreated, infection can spread to joints, the heart, and the nervous system. Lyme disease is diagnosed based on symptoms, physical findings, for example, the rash, and the possibility of exposure to infected ticks. Laboratory testing is helpful if used correctly and performed with validated methods. Most cases of Lyme disease can be treated successfully with a few weeks of antibiotics. What antibiotics do we usually use? What antibiotic do we usually use to treat Lyme? Very good. Look at you guys go. So quick. Everybody's like, doxy, doxy, doxy. It's just coming in fast. Good. Okay. Steps to prevent Lyme disease include using insect repellent, removing ticks promptly, applying pesticides, and reducing tick habitat. The ticks that transmit Lyme disease can occasionally transmit other tick-borne diseases as well. So we've got chapter 85, which is Lyme disease. So annular lesions, or an erythema migrans, Latin, comes from annulus, which means ring. So annular lesion, you can see that it comes from a lesion that's showing a ring. I have only seen this one time in my life, and like in real life, and it was in the emergency department when I was a medical scribe. And I remember when I saw this, it was on a female that I saw this. I was shooketh. I was quaking. I was literally like, oh my goodness, this looks exactly like the textbooks. And it was one of the first things I've seen where it looks exactly like what they teach you in school, and then you see it in real life. So it was you know, it was unfortunate to see it, but it was great from an educational perspective. So annular lesions, remember, ring, and it occurs in approximately 70 to 80% of infected persons. So what is the time frame it takes for the erythema migrans to appear after being bitten by a tick? I don't want the average, I want the, the range. Like, what are we really looking at for the time frame for that lesion to appear, for that EM to appear? Okay, I've got lots of different answers. I've got every single answer was chosen. Every single answer was chosen. So A, B, C, and D, all of the answer choices have been selected. The correct answer is about 3 to 30 days. The average is 7 days. The average is 7 days, but it can take some time. It can take some time for it to show up. So the tick must be attached for 36 to 48 hours or more before the Lyme disease bacterium can be transmitted. Is this true or false? Is this true or false? Somebody said in this economy it's false. Oh man. Okay. I can't. You guys are a trip. Okay, so it's true. I need to be, let's talk about this because I know some people are gonna get really wound up because let me tell you, there are a lot of opinions when it comes to tick-borne diseases. And there's a lot of papers, okay? There's a lot of research. There's a lot of information out there about Lyme disease, how long the tick has to stay attached. Remember that for your test, you're gonna use the APIC text and your CDC guidelines as your point of reference. We have to remember that. I know a lot of us read lots of journal articles, we do lots of research, but when you're taking your test, you wanna make sure that as your source of truth, you're using your APIC text and your CDC guidelines because that's what you're going to be quizzed on, okay? So like, if you're a questioner, you might potentially get lost in the sauce because you'll be like, well, there's all of this amazing research and information that's saying X, Y, and Z, but let's limit our information, right? As far as for this test, APIC and CDC. Okay. Question 3. You're caring for a patient who's extremely immunocompromised. While reviewing the laboratory data for this patient, you discover he has had a sputum examination for acid-fast bacilli, which is smear positive. The physician is aware but states isolation is not necessary. What is a possible reason that the patient does not need isolation? A, his past AFB cultures have always been negative. B, his PPD skin test is negative. C, he only has lower lobe infiltrates on his chest radiograph. Or D, his regular sputum culture is growing nocardia species. Okay, so I'm getting lots of answer choices here, lots of D's, lots of A's, lots of B's, not too many C's. Not too many C's. Okay, so we've got a patient who has a positive sputum smear for AFB, acid-fast bacilli. So in infection prevention, when you see acid-fast bacilli, what are you looking for? What disease immediately pops into your head when you read acid-fast bacilli? There should be one disease that, yes.
Mycobacterium tuberculosis.
Correct. Immediately. It's like ring the alarm. That should be the first thing that comes to mind is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Absolutely positive. Absolutely, 100%. So with your acid-fast bacilli, the sputum sample is positive. It's positive AFB. Now the important thing that you need to remember is that we have lots of different types of acid-fast bacilli. We've got an entire Mycobacteria umbrella where we can have Mycobacterium abscessus, Mycobacterium marinum, Mycobacterium avium complex, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So our provider knows, but doesn't think isolation is necessary. His past AFB cultures have always been negative. That's not right, okay? You can already immediately cross A off because if you've had past AFB cultures and then they're positive, that should make you a little bit concerned. His PPD skin test is negative. Not necessarily. That's not enough because we've got a positive sputum, we've got a positive AFB smear. So the PPD it's not something we're taking into account at this very moment when we've got a positive sputum. He only has lower lobe infiltrates on his chest radiograph. That alone in itself is not enough for me to take a patient off isolation, right? Because, okay, well, he's got infiltrates. There's something going on in the chest. We've got something going on in the lungs. So the only answer choice that we have left is his regular sputum culture is growing nocardia species. So pulmonary tuberculosis and pulmonary nocardiosis are similar in most clinical symptoms and radiological manifestation. Nocardia causes a variety of human infections, including cutaneous, pulmonary, and systemic nocardiosis. Nocardiosis is usually an opportunistic infection and most commonly presents as pulmonary disease. Nocardia infection can occur by inhaling contaminated dust or via contamination of a wound with soil containing nocardia. Nocardiosis results in a positive AFB smear. Other bacteria that may have positive AFB smears include Actinomyces, Rhodocus, Legionella I can't say that one, or cyst of Cryptosporidium species. And nocardiosis requires the use of standard precautions. So one of the things that is going to be continuous throughout the exam and when you're taking it is this. You've got to know your infectious diseases and you've got to know your mode of transmission. What infectious disease are we dealing with and what are our modes of transmission? Because what this question is asking you is, do you know what different types of infectious diseases fall under an AFB positive smear? And do you know what type of isolation would be necessary? Because with nocardia, we know that it's an opportunistic pathogen, it's in soil, it's not going to be transmitted person to person. So that is our reason why this patient would not need isolation. It's because we know what that AFB smear can be insinuating. Okay, we are over time at 3:04, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. So our action items for next week, these are the readings that you need to take a look at. Chapters 21, risk factors facilitating transmission of infectious agents. Chapter 22, microbial pathogenicity and host response. And chapters 23, the immunocompromised host. The other thing that's really important that you do is you need to take your practice 1 exam. So sometime between today and next Friday, you need to take your practice 1 exam. Because like I mentioned, you need to figure out what are the areas that you need to focus on and that you need to study. Because you need to start now. So those weak areas, you need to start focusing on them from the very beginning, so that you know what type of additional readings you need to do. Okay, so we will go ahead and wrap up. I'll see if I've got any questions in the chat. I'm the worst at microbiology, and I already know that's what I'll be focusing on. Yes, absolutely.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Where would I get the text to study?
The text?
I tried to purchase, but they were out.
Okay, so the actual hard copies of the text are out, so you need to purchase a subscription through APIC, through the Association for Professionals of Infection Control.
Okay.
Okay. No, so this one. Yes, so you can purchase a subscription here on their website. Where will the recordings of the study group be located? YouTube. I don't have enough time to send out emails after every meeting the way I used to. So you can find me on YouTube. It's CIC Epidemiologist. I will post the recordings on there. Is the study guide in the Google Drive 2018? Is the study guide in the Google Drive based on 2018 or 2022 exam? The study guide has not been updated since 2018, so it's based off of 2018. Do you have any advice for reading? I have the APIC text and some chapters are quite long. Yeah, so here's the thing. You don't need to read every single chapter. I have had colleagues who have taken this test and they've read every single chapter. You don't necessarily need to read every single chapter. You need to focus on the areas that you're not understanding, that you need further clarification on, and your practice exam will be one of those things that can guide you on what areas you're not understanding or you need to read more. And yes, some of the chapters are very long. Just break it up into pieces. If you can't focus for more than 30 minutes, just read for 30 minutes, take a break, and go back. You've got time to figure out how you want to prepare for this. Thank you for providing the group. Of course, anytime, anytime.
Luce, where would we locate study guide?
So in the Google Drive.
Oh,
in
that's
this
right.
Google Drive, yes. And I sent the link.
Yeah, I wasn't able to get that on the chat.
Okay, let me see if I can post it on there again so that you can have it. Okay. Oh, somebody already got it. Excellent. Will this be the same link for future meetings? Yes. As you guys saw today, I am not the most technologically savvy person. So yes, we will have the same room. I couldn't figure out how to send invites, calendar invites to everybody. So you're welcome to you know, join us every Friday if you can, and if not, you can catch the recording. All right. Okay. And Lakshmi, I will message you on LinkedIn. Okay, guys, that's it for today. I'm going to go ahead and end our meeting now. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you next Friday.
Thank you.